This is Alexis Baum of ABCju. On Wednesday, July 15th, we'll be celebrating over 300 episodes. And I'll be speaking as part of the Ikigai Dinner Series at 15th Street Farm here in St. Pete. More info and tickets are available at 15thstreetfarm.com.
Thank you so much, Alexis. Well, welcome to Get to the Roots. On the show today, we have Alexis Baum. She's here to talk about ABCju, the launch of her podcast, the official launch, even though it started all the way back in 2022. And also about an event that you just heard the promo for going on tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit to Alexis here, and then some of this will be edited because we did get quite goofy in our conversation. And I know that this hour of Get to the Roots is like kind of in the middle of the day, kind of the lull. Like I don't want to lose anyone with my gibberish. So it is a little edited, and hopefully you'll find the conversation exciting and enthralling and thought-provoking. I think all those words mean the same thing. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, it looks good. Hi. Sorry.
We'll never see hi the same again.
No, I would have hello written on the page. Okay, hello, I'm Get to the Roots Stef. From Get to the Roots on Radio St. Pete, and also the Get to the Roots Extras podcast, where I archive the interviews that I get to put out on Radio St. Pete on my show. I'm here today with my bestie, Miss Alexis Baum of ABCju. She's also from Times Over Time. She's on the board of Radio St. Pete. She is a community leader within Historic Kenwood, and she's also participated with or started at least a half a dozen other more inspirational projects. But today we're here to talk about ABCju. So first of all, you've just launched ABCju on all major podcast platforms. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of that and how this made you feel and your reflections on the project as a whole?
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, it's appropriate for you to ask me that because you have been an instrumental part of this launch. I know you wouldn't say that yourself, but it has been phenomenal to see 4 years in the making, or not even 4 years in the making, just about how ABCju could grow. It started in October 2022, and when it spontaneously started for me, kind of organically, it was just quick conversations with Alexis Baum, and I didn't know where it was going to go. And so to see it now, almost 4 years later, be something that can live beyond even Radio St. Pete. I mean, I have so much thanks and gratitude for Radio St. Pete for inspiring me to get it started and for being the ones to do the heavy lifting of getting it out in the world, while I just got to put my phone in front of people and ask them questions. That was really easy for me, but now it feels so wonderful to see it go beyond just Radio St. Pete and be able to be accessible on so many platforms and be, I guess I would say it's much more a collection now.
That is beautiful. Thank you for the kudos. Also, I would not be with Radio St. Pete without you. And so I have you to thank for that as well. And even though you and I goof off together a lot, and I've been very goofy on ABCju, I appreciate you so much. And so just thank you so much for being part of my life. Like, oh my God.
All right, this is where I'm like butting in here, back from the future. Like a movie, to be a little bit more succinct, because I did ramble when asking Alexis the next question. She has the event, if you're listening to this, on the 15th. It's tonight at 15th Street Farm, where she's doing basically a soft launch of the ABCju podcast, like officially, even though it's already been official for years. Maybe it's more of a renewing of the vows for ABCju. AB, take you, and I see you. Anyway, I'm not going to play out like a whole radio play of AB marrying CU. And then I asked her about 15th Street Farm because that's where it's at. Because I'd never heard of 15th Street Farm, except for one other person was very delighted to tell me about it. But we just had one quick conversation. So let's hear more about all of that from Alexis.
Yeah, so I think my experience getting to know 15th Street Farm is very representative of not only what my podcast represents and tries to do, but just what St. Pete has meant to me, because I feel like this city is a community of people who are really like a pretty small, tight network, actually. Like, and I've only lived here now just about 6 years. And even in my first year or two, it was wild to see how fast I could just kind of get in the trenches with the community. And before you know it, you're sucked into all kinds of things and you're inspired by all kinds of things. And if you're the kind of person who dives right in and likes to do creative, collaborative type things, there's just endless supply. So 15th Street Farm is, an urban farm that was just not far from where I live. And, I don't need to tell the whole story, but like a friend of a friend or someone I knew like hosted a dinner there. And that is what introduced me to the farm. And then before I knew it, I was falling in love with it. I've probably been to the farm for events and things maybe 5 or 6 times, and gotten to know the founder and some of the other people that work there. And so Emmanuel, the founder of the farm, during one random conversation with me, started talking about this Ikigai dinner series, Ikigai being a Japanese word that means finding your purpose, a word that's almost impossible to say.
Oh, I gotta butt back in from the future past or whatever again. When I was originally asking Alexis about the dinner tonight, this is how I said Ikigai.
Ikigai. I can't say it right.
And as you can see, I still can't say Ikigai correctly. It's just Japanese pronunciation is difficult.
So I struggle to pronounce it properly every time myself. But but anyway, he had this idea late last year about doing this dinner series where it was a more communal style dinner, a 3-course meal, and the community that comes would also do the serving and do and set the tables and clean up after, to create a communal space for learning and for interacting with one another versus just coming for a served dinner. And he wanted it also to be an inspiration for people in finding their purpose and finding their way of giving back to others. So that's the theme of the dinner series. And as soon as he explained that to me and how he wanted to find speakers or facilitators to make those 3-course dinners more interactive and engaging, I was like, count me in. He almost didn't have to ask, but he probably knew that I'd be one of those people because I just thrive on the passion for this kind of thing. And so I wholeheartedly offered to volunteer to facilitate one of those dinners. And it's a pleasure to be able to use that as a mechanism to also engage people in this ABC Jus. And the timing, I used the timing, of course, as a great milestone to get something done. If you can relate to that as you're listening, you'd understand that when you're trying to do a creative project that's been years in the making and it finally feels like it's time to make a shift, whereby Stephanie and I knew it was like there was enough of a collection, just under 300 at the time, episodes that was like ready to like put this on its own platform and make it a thing and grow it to the next level. You can have that vision and that creative idea, and then it's like, if it doesn't have an actual deadline, it may never get done. And so this Ikigai dinner became a milestone and an excuse to do a soft launch of a podcast that already existed, but why not use it as an excuse to be like, let's share it more with the world. Let's pronounce it as coming to the next level. And so that's what this is all about. It was really about giving myself a good deadline.
Okay, so the next question that I asked Alexis during the original conversation that we had was about her theme, like her specific theme for the dinner that is going on tonight. Again, if you're listening on the 15th, and she started shaking her head no at me, and I was like, "Well, I want to ask you like what you're gonna tell people," and she was like, "No," and it was a point where I was accidentally trying to get the magician to reveal their secrets, or I don't really like calling my friend the magician, but that was like the theme. Like it was too much to go into, and she wants to keep it a surprise for those of you out there in Radio St. Pete land and St. Petersburg, Florida, and the world who do get the chance to attend. So then I was like, well, darn, I really want to ask you about your work, because she does this cool thing called human-centered design, which I didn't even know that there was a name for what she does until I met her and she explained it to me. And I wasn't even sure that this whole concept within our world was as remarkably well relevant as it actually is again until I met her. So that is the next question. And I was being very cheeky, so she did approve this next question. All right, let's get back to my awesome guest.
Great question, Stephanie. Yeah, so a lot of my professional career has been under a banner called human-centered design, which is a word that some people know very well and some will be like, what does that actually mean? I think most of us know the word design and have experienced design. In fact, we experience it all the time. But a lot of people will be like, you design things? Like, do you design posters or do you design like fashion or spaces or what? And I usually share with people that I help people design whatever they're designing, whether it's a business, whether it's a learning program, whether it's, a theater experience, whatever it is, with the people in mind that they're designing for. So it's more of like an approach to the way that you create new things in the world, where you're taking the people at the center of what you're creating and really trying to understand them well in order to, as I sometimes would say, like give them the gift of something new that they didn't maybe even realize they needed. Or, if we've ever been given a really good gift, we're like, how did you know I needed that? I didn't even realize. For me, that's what human-centered design really is about. And once you know it as that, it's like, I don't need to explain it to you. You get it innately. So part of my, my master's degree and my professional studies and my professional career has had an element in it of getting to know people and getting people to talk and really being present to who they are and how they are, and like with zero judgment, but just trying to understand them deeply, which is always impossible to do ultimately because we can't be inside someone else's world. But when we use that phrase of like getting in their shoes, right, we're doing our very best to sort of like, I would say, inform our own intuition on behalf of them. And ABCs really came out of all the ethnographic research skills that I have and the anthropological, the anthropology, ethnographic research, like study of people, like that is all at the center of my work.
Ooh. Just taking a little pause so that can sink in. I didn't know when I asked her this question she was going to use such interesting and specific terminology. So I wanted to take a quick pause to let that sink in with you, like as I already said, but also according to Google. Oh, thank you, Google's AI overview. Made me so lazy. Okay. Ethnographic research is an immersive, qualitative methodology designed to study cultures, communities, and social behaviors from the insider's perspective. So I guess when people go and assimilate with tribes and other areas that have tribal culture and they become part of the tribe, then they can study the culture, community, and social behaviors from that inside perspective. That's me adding to that. I'm really dumbing it down for all of us here because it is an interesting point that she's making about doing her podcast from the inside perspective of the people that or persons that she's interacting with. Okay, so back to Google. Its ultimate goal is to generate thick descriptions of everyday practices. Oh, thick descriptions. Oh, can I read this? Rituals and worldviews to reveal the nuanced meanings behind human action. So sounds like figuring out why people do things from the insider perspective, taking into account like behaviors and driving factors. All right, I feel like we got all of that. Let's get back to Alexis.
And so when I do an ABCs episode by spontaneously putting my phone in front of someone because I feel like this is a moment to capture them, I'm embodying all the principles that I know that I teach in this space. And obviously I've practiced it for 20 or more years. And so it's more just like my natural way of being in the world. One of the little lessons that I have often been known to say or teach inside of a adult classroom, and I say classroom just because it was a room where we're all having a transformative learning experience. I do a lot of corporate, learning things and organizational learning. And I'll often talk about listening as a willingness to have your mind changed. And so if you're truly listening, it doesn't matter if you're giving eye contact or you're nodding your head or you're repeating the words, you still may not be listening unless you are really open to whatever's coming at you, shifting how and who you are. And I think that's easier said than done. And I am not a master of it, but I do try to remind myself of that every day. And so a lot of times when I do an episode of ABC's You, if I had asked someone ahead, hey, would you like to do an interview with me? They would have turned me down, or they would have been nervous, or we would have been too planned. And they probably wouldn't have felt comfortable to do it. But then when I just do it with them, and I do it in such a way where I'm so present to whatever they say or do is right, and whatever way they are is great, and like whatever story they have to share is worth a spotlight. And with that mindset, which I truly do have, I'm not faking it, I truly believe that. And so by the end of a 3 to 10 minute conversation, they're like, wow, that actually felt really easy and good and great. Like it just felt good. And I think there's no way to kind of like give someone a process for doing that. You actually have to have the mindset that you want to hear about them and that it is interesting to you. And then the rest just happens from.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much again for agreeing to talk to me. Congratulations on over 300 episodes. I mean, so from my point of view, like I do plan my interviews and they are hard to do. And yes, you do worry about people saying, no, I would never have this. I'll never have as many guests as you already have, because it is like redonkulous sometimes to try to like figure out like who is willing to talk to you and who's on the same vibe as you. And you just get out there and you like match people's vibes and you just like, you bring the goodness out of people. And I love that. And a lot of people love to listen to your podcast because it's like fun and short and totally different than the episode before a lot of times. So kudos to you. You've crafted something truly unique and genuine in this world. Where can people find your podcast?
Okay, I think you can go to abcsu.com and it will divert you because I don't have a website yet, to be quite frank, but I do own that domain. So abcsu.com, which is absessyou.com, will divert you to my Linktree. So Linktree/abcsu, which will give you all the links to the streaming platforms where you can find it, as well as the link to Radio St. Pete, where it originated.
Oh, we're coming to the end, and there's actually less sound effects on this part of the audio recording and interview today. I always mess up how I phrase my last question. It's just supposed to be a question like, what is your message to the world? But I want to ask it in a very specific way where it's like, well, if everybody had to actually hear your message, because we all have a message to the world that I feel like drives us and we think about, and you're like, I'm going to tell the world this, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I end up every time I get a chance to talk to someone on Get to the Roots and Get to the Roots Extras. So I phrased it terribly. And we were trying to be more spontaneous. Well, I was trying to be more spontaneous to take less time in the interview because we had just done a bunch of work on ABCSU before we sat down to talk for Get to the Roots. So I'm going to just chop it right here and just let Alexis cut in and tell you where her message starts and get rid of all of the blathering that happened at the time. Thank you for your patience as I work to craft the best possible listening experience for you with respect to my guest.
But my message would be, because I'm so passionate about learning experiences, and I feel like when I interact with people, even on the podcast, like it's about kind of learning from them by way of whoever they are. And I think, learning really does not come from a classroom experience necessarily. It just comes from all these things we do in action and in co-creation and collaboration with others, in conversation. That for me is like the truest form of transformative learning. And I think people in this world might underestimate what like a small shared experience or like a meaningful moment with someone can do to shift each of you a little bit, and over time that just really adds up to different relationships and different people. You become different people just from having these little moments together. And so I just encourage everyone not to underestimate or to feel like it's too hard to go out of your way to have these little moments with others. because I don't think we understand what they add up to until we're there. And so give them a go, please.
Oh my God. You're like the master of moments.
Ooh, I like that title.
All right. Thank you so much again for joining me today. For listeners, again, abcsu.com is where you can find all of the links for the different podcast platforms in which you can now find, in addition to Radio St. Pete, for the ABCSU. And then also, again, 15thstreetfarm.com is for more information about the event that's going on tonight. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.